Hello, everyone, and welcome to our new show, Pathways to Knowledge. We will be bringing you this new show on Friday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific and 9 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the time slot that we used to bring you Hello Heaven. We ran that for several years, brought you a lot of great information. There's a huge difference between knowing facts and converting those facts to knowledge, and our goal with this new show is to use our channeled information to bring you true knowledge. Connie and I brought you almost 1,000 videos on YouTube from our various shows through the years. We've learned an incredible amount of information, and we want to try to help you convert the information to truly understand how to use what we bring you and help others by bringing about peace and love as God wants us to live. A major problem in modern life is knowing when you're hearing information it's a lie or realizing you're hearing the truth. Sometimes the information we bring you in our spirit channeling sessions is very, very hard to believe. A couple of weeks ago, we brought you Fred, our alien spirit. He's been on our different shows, and he told you a lot of things that are kind of hard to believe. But when he speaks, it is the truth. Now, the laws of our country are supposed to protect citizens from harm and base their opinions on equality for all. In the ideal world, the decisions of the courts are free from political influence and interpretations that would be opposing the written laws. In some recent instances, federal court justices have done things as render opinions that affected all the citizens in our country instead of just in that district. The laws of the country are supposed to be enacted by Congress, and there have been recent events where authorities of Congress have been bypassed by executive decisions. The legality of certain enforcement has become blurred in many, many different times and places. So tonight we're going to bring you the spirits of two famous Supreme Court justices whose legal opinions were based on both ends of the legal spectrum. But they were also great personal friends. The justices are Ruth Gaynor Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia. Hopefully their opinions will help bring you some clarity to what is taking place in our modern world. Now, if you're new to the show, you might not understand our procedures. We will have our friend Elena will ask the questions, and those questions are prepared ahead of time. And I will answer them in the words of the spirits, in this case, the two justices. And I rest assured that I do have no idea what they're going to say. So hopefully things will go well. I know we have some really interesting questions arranged. And I think it's now time that we will bring in Elena, and we will advance onto the part of the show that I'm sure you're more interested in than listening to what I have to say. Okay, folks, as promised, tonight we are going to have Justice Ginsburg and Justice Scalia with us answering questions. And with all the problems in the world, I think it's going to be quite interesting. So Elena is back to ask the questions again. Elena?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome.
Welcome back. And I know that you have been looking forward to this, so let's get her started.
Welcome, Justice Ginsburg and Justice Scalia, and thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. I will ask each of you the same question, and you will take turns answering. Would each of you like to begin with an opening statement? We'll start with ladies first. Justice Ginsburg.
Of course. I never miss an opportunity to speak. I used to love to speak when I was around. Every once in a while, Justice Scalia would even allow me to talk. So I want to thank everyone that's listening. And I want to tell everyone that what is taking place in the world today is very, very difficult for everyone. I think that everyone needs to take a more humane look at things, a more welcome path where everyone helps one another. And I think they need to think about how they can wipe out animosities. I know hatreds are very difficult. There were many things in life that sadly I hated, but I tried not to ever let it influence my judicial decisions. So I think if everyone just takes a step back, takes a deep breath, enjoys the people that are around them and the life that God has given them, things will be far better. Justice Scalia. Yes, I must admit, Justice Ginsburg never did miss a chance to talk when she could, but we were great friends in life. I never really agreed with her legal philosophies, but we got along. And that was the most important thing, really. We could have intellectual discussions. We could check things, how things were going, how things were with our personal lives. And we simply got along, even though we disagreed. Now, today we're seeing that many of the politicians disagree and can't get along. I wish that everyone would take a step back and think about how they can do a better job for the community, for life in general. So I know you've got some interesting questions, so let us begin.
In life, each of you viewed the interpretation of the law from a far different viewpoints, but you were best of friends. How is that possible? Let's begin with you, Justice Scalia.
Because I never took it personal. We would disagree. That was our job. She was appointed by a liberal president, and we knew what her viewpoints were going to be. I was a conservative. I looked at things much differently. The Constitution can be very difficult, and it can be very hard to interpret. She interpreted it one way, I interpreted it the other, but that had nothing to do with whether we got along. It was very easy, actually. She was actually a wonderful person. I guess she thought I was a pretty good guy too, even though I disagreed with her. But you have to look past differences of opinion. Today, many people hate each other if you have an opinion different than your own. You must understand that there is no one that's always right. I mean, I think I was the one that was almost always right, but she thought the opposite. So we just simply got along. Justice Ginsburg. Well, he gave a pretty good explanation, and I hinted at it a little bit before we got to this question. My friend here, he actually did have a very good and friendly personality. We could truly debate. We could argue. We could write differences of opinion. But we never got personal with each other in our opinions. We stuck to the law as we understood it. I wanted the Constitution to be a living document. He wanted a strict interpretation. So I would write my opinions, and I would not call him a fool or anything for his opinion. He was entitled to it. He understood that I had my opinion, and I was entitled to it. If all individuals would understand that everyone is entitled to their opinion, life would be so much better. Do not think about animosities. Think about what you can do to make life happier, more friendly. I mean, that's what we did. We had very high pressure jobs. There were always thousands upon thousands of people that would disagree with what we said. We knew whatever we said, people would disagree with it. But we took solace in the fact we were still good friends. And even though we disagreed, we remained good friends. Eleanor?
But how can we teach the American people to be more like the two of you? You have such different legal philosophies, yet you're such good friends. Justice Ginsburg?
I think people must simply learn to forgive. If someone disagrees with you, Okay, accept it. Two people should be able to debate differences without anger. God tells you not to show anger because the other person will show anger towards you. We never got angry with each other. We would point out what we thought were differences. We would point out what we thought was correct. He would never agree with me, and I would never agree with him. We basically knew this when we started. There were times that the issues were so obvious that we would agree, but we could always debate. We could always talk. We could always disagree. And we never showed anger towards each other. Justice Scalia. People today seem like they dwell upon differences. Individuals today and throughout time, but I think even more so today, focus on their own beliefs, and they do not believe that other people are correct that differ with them. There's always going to be, basically, half the people are going to disagree with you. There are certain issues that are obvious under the law, and we had no problem getting together. Today, people must discuss things. They must debate peacefully and without showing anger. When God tells people that they should never show anger because it will be shown back to them, that is basically a golden rule that should be followed. He tells you not to do anything you do not want done to yourself. So if you show anger to another person, you know it's going to be shown back. So debating peacefully, if you can come to a general agreement, but you must also remember that people have to compromise. Compromise settles differences. And today, it seems that no one can compromise anymore. People just simply have to follow the commandments of God, and things would simply get much better. Ellen?
How are the relationships between the current members of the Supreme Court, Justice Scalia?
Not real good. Some of them, there are obviously some great differences among members of the court right now. Many of the individuals on the court are trying to be very open-minded. And in doing so, they are making decisions that are opposite to what the constituents thought they would make before they were elected. I think in general, most of the members are trying to do their best, but it's still a fact that politics and the threats from politicians are having an effect on many of the members. So there are some that I think truly dislike each other, and that is very sad. Justice Ginsburg. It is very difficult to have the same relationship that we had when we were on the court. We would try to compromise where we could, but if our opinions were opposite, then so be it. We would write down what we thought, and that would be the end of it. I think today politics is entering the court, and there are members of the court that think that certain members have political views and are influenced by those views. And because of it, there are definitely stronger animosities than there were in our days. But there will always be differences. I think that the number of justices should not change. And I think that politicians should not threaten the justices or speak down to them. When that happens, I think the certain members react negatively, and possibly it does affect some of their judgments.
Justice Ginsburg, you were always such a strong advocate for women's rights and gender equality. What is your opinion about the transgender males playing women's sports? And after you voice your opinion, we'll get Justice Scalia's opinion.
I am truly an advocate for women's rights. I always was, I always will be, and I probably will be in my future lives when I decide to return. Now, that being said, there are individuals who are genuinely mentally stressed at their genders. I do believe that they should have the right to a male should be able to live as a female if that is a personal choice. A female should try to live as a male if that is her personal choice. But I do not believe that a male should be able to enter into women's sports because there are physical differences between males and females. And the women are put at a distinct disadvantage. So it is very consistent for me to not have men in women's sports because I am an advocate of women's rights. And if a male is taking advantage because of their physical strength of a woman, she needs to be protected from that. It can be very dangerous when women are competing in certain sports against men. So I feel that an individual can make their lifestyle decisions, but I do not believe that a male should take advantage of a female if that individual was born a male. Justice Scalia. I think you can all anticipate my answer on this one. A male should never be able to say he is a female and compete in women's sports. Males have great physical abilities and powers. They are physically stronger than the female. Their frames are larger. They're more muscular. It's not fair ever to have a male competing against a female. Yes, that individual may decide that he wants to live as a female, and that truly is his personal right as well. But that does not make him a female in stature. And because of that, they should never be able to compete.
President Trump just enacted broad tariffs using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that the president lacked the authority to impose broad, open-ended tariffs under that authority. How do each of you feel about that opinion? Justice Scalia, let's start with you.
I think that if there is a true great emergency, that the president has powers to do certain things. The question comes down to whether there truly was a great enough emergency for him to use tariffs that should have been approved by Congress. There are many ways that a president can do things, but I think his use of the act that he did in many instances stretch his authorities. You may be surprised to hear me say that, but I think that he made a bad choice, that he could have used different laws and he could have done it in different ways. Justice Ginsburg. I totally feel that he had exceeded the laws. He should have gone to Congress, and Congress truly has the right to enact tariffs. There are ways that he can enact tariffs. There are ways that Congress can be bypassed, but not under the terms as he defined them. I think his advisors made a bad decision for him in that case. Oh.
Immediately following the Supreme Court defeat, the administration pivoted to Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. This law allows the president to impose a temporary surcharge up to 15% for 150 days to address the trade deficits. Because this is an expressly delegated power from Congress, these new tariffs are currently considered legal, though they must be renewed or approved by Congress after a 150-day window. How do each of you feel about the legality of using the Trade Act? Justice Ginsburg?
I feel that that would have been the better path for him. The Trade Act does give him the ability to take actions, but it is not a long-term situation. President Trump imposed his tariffs as a long-term remedy to cure imbalances in trade. There may be certain instances where he was right and maybe certain instances where he was wrong with the intent of the tariffs. But if he had used the Trade Act, Congress had explicitly given the president the right to do it. The downside, of course, was that he had to eventually come to Congress for approvals, but he controlled both houses of Congress. So I am unsure why his advisors had him go the route that he did. Justice Scalia. I think that there are certain grounds where he could have gone from both decision sides, but if he had used the Trade Act, I don't think there would be any debate about it. I think he would have a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court concerning it. But he chose to go a route where he was intentionally trying to bypass Congress. That is the truth. I do not know why he bypassed them when he controlled both houses. It may be that he didn't have support, that there were Republicans that were not going to vote for him to do this. The Trade Act would have been a very secure way to proceed.
President Trump is currently waging a military action against Iran, designated Epic Fury. Do you believe he has the legal authority to do so without consulting Congress? And if so, under what authority? Justice Scalia?
I think that this is a very iffy decision. He is doing it as an emergency action. The sad part of this is that the problem with Iran has been kicked down the road and not faced through many terms, many different presidents. I do think that the President Trump truly believes that Iran with a nuclear weapon would be a disaster. I think that he and Israel were making decisions together. Israel was going to take action one way or another. I think that the president thought that Israel was not going to have the abilities to totally overcome and accomplish their goals. And for that reason, he decided to go along and to participate in legal action. For many times, by not declaring formal war, it's been argued that you do not have to go to Congress. I believe that the president does have the right, the clear right, to go into different types of actions to protect the country. Now, the question becomes the extent of the actions. I do think that there will be a time that he has to go to Congress if the scale of the war continues to grow at the rate that it is. Justice Ginsburg. I do not believe that he had the right to take this action. He knew that he was going to be declaring a major military action against Iran. He knew that there would be many forces involved, and he knew that he would be using many of the assets of our military. He knew that he would be spending great amounts of money with the use of these assets. So the Congress is supposed to control the purse strings. So I believe that if he had gone to Congress and gotten his approvals, he would have been in perfect condition. But now he is facing the risk of a large-scale war that he basically declared himself. So it's the old story. When you make a decision by yourself without consultation of those you should have consulted with, the burden of the decision falls squarely upon your shoulders. And I do not believe he should have entered this without congressional approval.
District Court Judge Boasberg issued an emergency temporary restraining order to stop the deportation of Venezuelans allegedly belonging to the Tren de Agua gang and certified a nationwide class of all non-citizens subject to his proclamation. Do you believe he had the authority to make such a ruling, Justice Ginsburg?
I believe he exceeded his authority. There are instances of national emergency where judges should make rulings to protect the American people. This was not a major issue. There were individual rights involved, and the judge had every right to make the decision that he made, but I do not think he was right in making it a nationwide decision with all the repercussions. I do not believe that an individual judge has the ability to understand the ripple effect of a nationwide decision. When any individual acts on his own, he does not have access to the information that a group of individuals would have for discussion and debate. Justice Scalia. I don't agree with either one of his decisions. I think that the way he held his decision was in error, and he compounded his error by making it a nationwide problem. There are multiple judges on courts, and the intent is for multiple decisions. I do not believe that unless there is a clear case of national emergency, that any judge should make nationwide decisions. The immigration laws are to be made by Congress. And when he is making nationwide decisions, he is interpreting what Congress intended. The final decision should be in the hands of the Supreme Court, where there are multiple judges that are totally competent, have huge staffs to do research, and understand the nationwide situations. So he was clearly, in my mind, above the authorities that were granted in him to make that type of decision.
Are you both satisfied with the job that your replacements on the Supreme Court, for you, Justice Ginsburg, Amy Coney Barrett, and for you, Justice Scalia, Neil Gorsuch? We'll start with you, Justice Scalia.
I would rather see Amy making more conservative decisions. Since she is on the court, she has made some excellent decisions, but she has also done a few that I do not totally agree with. I would prefer that she was a bit more conservative, but in general, I think she is doing a good job. Justice Ginsburg. I think that my replacement should be more believing in the liberal interpretation of a living constitution. There are times that I believe that Justice Gorsuch does follow a more liberal track, but I believe there are also times that he should be making his decisions based in a more liberal policy. But they are both, I think both the replacements are wonderful jurists, and I think they're doing what they truly believe is right.
The Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. The Trump administration has recently challenged this long-standing interpretation through Executive Order 14160, which argues that children born to undocumented parents are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and therefore are not entitled to citizenship. What is your opinion concerning Trump's executive order and birthright citizenship? Justice Ginsburg?
I think that if you are born in this country, you are a citizen. Because even though the parents may not be, they are subject to our laws and jurisdictions when they are in this country. I know that the law was passed many, many years ago. I know that it was because of a result of the Civil War. But I think that the reasonings are still logical today. If an individual is in this country, it is under the jurisdiction of our laws, and I think that would make them a citizen. Justice Scalia. I think that the birthright law is a law that has been incredibly abused. You have women that are pregnant that come into this country. They have the baby is a citizen, and they return home. So for that momentary time that they were in our country, they had to listen to our laws, but they were never citizens. And it is only citizens that are fully committed to follow the laws of our country. For instance, if you're not a legal resident of our country, you will not be drafted. So that person is never totally under the jurisdiction of the country. When you become a citizen of the United States, you are under the jurisdiction. A child that is under parents who will never be citizens are not, I believe, to be included. So I would say that in this instance, if the president defines it properly with checks and balances as to who would qualify and who wouldn't, it would be very easy to abuse a change in policy. So he has to be very clear on what he wants and how he wants to define it. But I believe if it is properly defined, birthright citizenship should not be an automatic thing.
Justice Scalia, in an era where invasion is invoked to describe migration patterns rather than foreign armies, does the original public meaning of the Alien Enemy Act allow a president to bypass the Due Process Clause entirely?
No. I think it is a misinterpretation. You do not have the right to change interpretations of words in order to change the law. Now, let me try to be a little bit more clear with that. You cannot redefine an immigrant that has come into this country illegally as an alien in order to interpret the laws of our nation against him. For instance, if a spaceship came and the individual that got out of the spaceship was an alien, could you use the same law against an individual from another planet as you would from an individual from another country? I know that that's an example that is out there, but I do not believe that you can reinterpret the meanings or use a different phraseology in order to change the intent of the law. Justice Ginsburg. Believe it or not, I totally agree with what my friend just stated. I do not think that you can use that loose interpretation in order to enact legal actions against a group of individuals. Ella?
Justice Ginsburg, if the Constitution truly follows the flag, can wartime authority from 1798 be used to strip persons of their due process on domestic soil simply by reclassifying a civil issue as an invasion?
No. No. The interpretation of that law has changed drastically. I do not believe that that law should be used to interpret whether one number of individuals entering illegally versus a higher number, where the higher number is an invasion, but the lower number is not. So it is just simply not an example that I believe, even under the most liberal or conservative interpretations, how you want to look at it, can be made. Justice Scalia. That the concept that we are speaking of did not truly exist at the time that that law was written. The law was very clear. We were welcoming immigrants during that period of time. The country had to have immigrants in order to settle the Western areas. So there was, I guess you could say, an invasion of immigrants during that time because we were welcoming them into the country. The laws were very different. So I do not believe that the term invasion of aliens should be used in this interpretation. I think that Congress should act, and I think that there should be legislation passed that defines what is taking place. But I do not think that a president or a senator or anyone else can determine the limits of what is and what is not an invasion.
Justice Ginsburg, you viewed the Constitution as a living document that evolves with society. And Justice Scalia, you viewed the Constitution as an enduring document with a fixed original meaning. Could you clarify your positions a little bit further? And do you see any way to find a compromise in your interpretations?
I believe that the Constitution, this is Justice Ginsburg speaking, should be interpreted that laws that were strictly interpreted 200 years ago should be interpreted differently today. I think that concepts can be altered to bring about change in laws. It is the responsibility of the legislature, the legislative body, to pass the laws. If the legislature fails to act and a law no longer should pertain to a situation, my friend would still use the original intent from 200 years ago to interpret how that situation would be solved. I believe that there should be some leeway from that strict interpretation to account for the period of time since the Constitution was constructed. Justice Scalia. The legislature, Congress, is the body that needs to pass laws if the interpretations have changed through time. It is not up to a single individual judge to decide how modern interpretations of a law should be made. It is only the responsibility of the legislature to pass such laws. So I do not believe that a justice should use their own individual interpretations, because it is clearly defined who is supposed to be making those understandings of law changes and to enact such changes. You know,
We would truly like to thank each of you for speaking with us tonight. In the spirit of the court, would each of you like to end with a closing statement? Justice Ginsburg?
yes, I see that my friend can still disagree with me, and we are not standing over here on the other side of the dimension, beating on each other because we disagree. You heard us have a conversation of friends with disagreement. It is very important that individuals today learn to compromise and learn to agree with one another or disagree peacefully. Everything does not have to go to open warfare when you disagree. Individuals do not need to hold grudges when you're involved in a conversation of disagreement. There's no reason to dislike a person because they disagree with you on an issue over which probably neither of you have any ability to change. If there's a situation where your neighbor is doing something that affects you, you can dislike him. You can use the legal authorities against him. But if you are arguing about whether President Trump should invade Iran or not, you have no control over this, realistically. So why would you get in a situation where you hate another person because that person believes that he should have invaded? Neither one of you have any control over it. So why would you take such an action of hatred against them? Humans have got to learn to get along. Humans have free will, and because of free will, they will disagree. You must learn that you are not always right, and you must learn that you're not always wrong. But you will not know this until you return to heaven and your guides truly tell you where you were right and wrong. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak once more. I hope that the listeners enjoyed our conversation. There were some very pointed questions and I think some very pointed answers. So I will let my good friend now finish up because I know he has something to say as well. I truly enjoyed tonight. As you know, if you were around when I was alive, I truly enjoyed debate. I enjoyed speaking my mind, and I enjoyed trying to convince others of my opinions. Justice Ginsburg is totally correct. Why would you get upset and have hatreds over situations where you have no control? You have enough problems in your everyday life where you have controls. Make the right decision to get along with others. Compromise. Do what you need to do to have a better environment around you. You know what is right and you know what is wrong. Others may not. It is up to them with their free will how they react to logic or situations. So just go out and live your own life. Make your own decisions. Try to help others. Try to show love, not hatred. When you show love and everyone else shows love, things are going to get much better. In the world today, hatred is so ingrained that it almost looks like there's no hope. But when you follow God, there is always hope. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I appreciate the time, and I hope that you enjoyed our answers as well.
Before we sign off, Justice Scalia, we know that your birthday was March 11th. We want to wish you a happy birthday and know how you celebrated in heaven.
Well, I wish I could say I had a drink, but I did not. We do not have alcohol over here, but thank you so much for wishing me happy birthday. I hope that things go better in your dimension. And if everyone would wish everyone a happy birthday when that time comes, it would certainly be better. Thank you. Okay, Elena, thank you again. Good show, good questions. And we will see you again next week.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Okay, folks, that was a very good interview. Thank you so much. And we will be back again next week.